The slap echoed through the underground car park. Not because it was loud, because everyone knew it should never have happened. A security guard dropped his clipboard. 3 executives stopped walking. Even the elevator doors remained open, because nobody inside remembered to press a button. Victoria Sterling stood frozen, one hand still raised. The most feared CEO in the city. The woman whose signature could create millionaires or end careers. And she had just slapped her driver in front of 40 employees. Noah Carter never lifted a hand. Never shouted. Never argued. A thin line of blood appeared where the edge of her ring had caught his cheek. Still, he said nothing. Victoria's voice came out controlled, in the way that things are controlled when they are very close to not being controlled at all. You leaked those documents. Noah looked at her. I did not. The breach came from your access level. I forwarded an internal file to the wrong address 3 weeks ago. By mistake. I reported it the same day. Someone else used it. I did not leak anything. Victoria looked at him. That is a very convenient explanation. It is the true one. Get out, she said. Clear your things and get out of this building. Noah slowly reached into his jacket pocket. He removed his company badge. He placed it carefully on the bonnet of the car beside him. He nodded once. Not in defeat. In the specific dignity of a man who has decided that some battles are not worth the cost of winning them. All right, he said. Then a small voice cut through the silence of the car park. Daddy. Every head turned. A little girl stepped out of the back seat of Noah's car. 7 years old. One knee wrapped in a white bandage. Dark curls escaping from 2 uneven pigtails. School bag hanging from one shoulder. She looked at the thin line of blood on her father's cheek. Then she looked at Victoria. And she smiled. The way children smile before they accidentally change someone's life forever. You're Victoria. Victoria's stomach tightened. Noah went pale. Nell. But the little girl was already walking toward her. Unhurried. Completely certain. Mummy told me all about you. The car park went completely silent. 40 people holding their breath. Because the little girl was looking directly at the woman who had just struck her father. And she said the words that would dismantle 10 years of certainty in a single sentence. She said you were supposed to be my mummy. If you have ever chosen something over someone and spent years wondering if you chose right, this story is for you. Welcome to Aurora Cinema Fiction. Stay with us. If this story moves you, please subscribe, like, and share. It means everything to this channel. 10 years before that Tuesday, Victoria Sterling was not powerful. She was 24 years old, sitting at a kitchen table in a small apartment, with a letter in her hands, and a decision in front of her, that she understood. Even then, she would spend the rest of her life measuring everything else against. The letter was from a venture capital firm in another city. They had seen her proposal. They believed in it. They were offering her everything she had been working toward since she was 19 years old. The catch was simple and absolute. She had to leave within 30 days. She had to commit fully and immediately. There was no version of the offer that allowed for waiting. Noah was asleep in the next room. He taught mathematics at a secondary school 3 streets away. He had proposed to her 8 months earlier, with a ring he had saved for over 2 years to buy. He had proposed on an ordinary Wednesday evening, with no particular setup and no grand gesture, because Noah Carter was not a man who confused the size of a moment with its meaning. He had simply looked at her across the kitchen counter and said her name, and then asked. And she had said yes before he finished the sentence. She sat at the kitchen table for 4 hours. She did not wake him. She did not want to watch him try to be generous about something that was going to break both of them, regardless of how generous anyone managed to be. She needed to think clearly. And she could not think clearly when Noah was in the room, because Noah made everything feel complete in a way that had nothing to do with achievement. He made ordinary Tuesday evenings feel like somewhere worth staying. He remembered the specific way she took her coffee. He remembered the author she had mentioned once in passing, who became a book wrapped in brown paper on her birthday 6 months later. He remembered the nightmare she had told him about at 2 a.m, and never mentioned again, because 3 weeks later, she found a small nightlight on her bedside table, with no note attached. He paid attention, and Victoria had spent her entire life in rooms where nobody paid attention to anything that did not have a number attached to it. She loved him. She had never loved anything the way she loved Noah Carter. And she left anyway. Not because the opportunity was greater than her love. Because she was 24 years old, and she did not yet understand that some things cannot be put down and picked back up later. That some people are not chapters. That some goodbyes do not stay the size they were when you said them. She wrote him a letter. She left it on the kitchen table beside his coffee mug, so it would be the first thing he found in the morning. She was in a taxi before sunrise. She did not look back at the building as the car pulled away. She told herself she would call when she landed. She did not call. Not because she did not want to. Because she knew, if she heard his voice, she would not be able to stay on the plane. And she could not afford to not stay on the plane. She told herself he would understand eventually. She told herself the company would succeed and she would come back for him. She told herself a great many things in the weeks and months that followed. None of them were true. And some part of her knew they were not true, even as she was telling them to herself. But the work was real, and the work was there, and the work did not require her to reckon with the expression on a man's face when he woke up and found a letter where a person used to be. She did not go back. The company took 4 years to become what she had imagined it would be. 4 years of 18-hour days, and decisions that lived in her chest until 3 a.m, and the particular loneliness of someone who has chosen a path that leaves very little room for anything that does not serve the destination. She told herself she did not mind the loneliness. She was very good at telling herself things. By the time Sterling Industries turned its first significant profit, Victoria was 28, and her name was appearing in publications that had not known she existed 2 years before. By 30, she was on the cover of 2 of them. By 32, her company employed over 300 people and operated across 4 countries. She was precisely what she had set out to become. She had relationships in those years. 3 of them. Each one lasted between 8 months and just over a year. Each one ended the same way. Not with arguments or betrayal. With the quiet recognition on both sides that Victoria was never fully present. That some part of her was always running a separate calculation. Measuring the distance between where she was and where she needed to be. The men she was with were not wrong to notice. They were simply paying attention in the way people pay attention when they sense they are not being fully seen. Victoria noticed their noticing and did not change. She moved on. Because moving on was something she had already demonstrated she was capable of. She had the evidence. She kept it somewhere in the back of her mind. A kitchen table. A letter. A coffee mug. The particular quality of pre-dawn light in an apartment where someone had always been paying attention to the small things. The third relationship had lasted 14 months. His name was Daniel. He was kind and perceptive, and he had come closer than anyone else to understanding the shape of what she was carrying. One evening near the end, he had said something she had not forgotten. They were sitting in her apartment after dinner, and he had looked at her across the table with the expression of a man who has finally decided to say the thing he has been holding for a long time. He said, "You are the most capable person I have ever met." She had started to thank him. He said, "I am not finished. You are the most capable person I have ever met, and you are also the loneliest. And I think you have been lonely for so long that you have mistaken it for independence." She had not responded. He had not pushed. 2 weeks later, she ended things gently and moved on the way she always moved on. But she thought about that sentence more than she thought about anything else he had ever said to her. Because he had been right. And she had known it even as she was showing him to the door. She did not think about it often, but she never stopped thinking about it entirely. Then 3 years ago, her father collapsed at a charity dinner. He was standing in the middle of a crowded room, and then he was on the floor, and the crowd pulled back and formed a circle around him, the way crowds do when something frightening happens, and nobody wants to be responsible for it. Nobody moved. Nobody knelt down. Several people took out their phones. Then a man pushed through the circle. He did not hesitate. He did not look around for someone else to take charge. He simply knelt down beside her father and began. Chest compressions. Calm. Steady. Counting quietly under his breath. He worked without stopping until the paramedics arrived 7 minutes later. The doctors told Victoria afterward that those 7 minutes were the difference. That the man on the floor had acted quickly enough and correctly enough that her father's heart had something to come back to. She had been across the room when it happened. She had pushed through the crowd and arrived to see a stranger kneeling beside her father with blood on his hand, from a cut he had sustained, somewhere in the rush, but had not stopped for. She had tried to find him afterward. She had asked every person at the event. Nobody knew his name. Nobody had thought to ask. He had disappeared into the crowd after the paramedics took over. The way people do when they help because it is right, and not because they want to be thanked for it. Her father lived for 2 more years after that night. The 2 most important years of her life. The year she finally slowed down enough to have dinner with him every Sunday. The year he started a garden. The year he told her things about her mother she had never known. The year he became himself again, fully in a way she had not seen since she was a child. She had those years because a stranger had knelt on a floor and not stopped. She had never found out who he was. Noah Carter woke up that morning and found the letter at 7:14. He remembered the exact time, because he had looked at the clock the moment he reached for her side of the bed and found it cold. He read the letter once. Then he folded it carefully along its original creases. He placed it in the drawer of his bedside table. He got up. He made coffee. He went to work. He taught 3 classes that day. Quadratic equations. Geometric proofs. The properties of prime numbers. He explained each one with the same patience and clarity his students had come to expect, and not one of them noticed anything different, because Noah Carter had always been the kind of man who left whatever he was carrying outside the classroom door. He did not call her. Not because he was angry. Because she had made a decision, and he understood it, even though it had removed the floor from beneath him, and he was not going to make it harder for her by being the voice she would have to say goodbye to, twice. He gave her the clean exit she had not quite managed to give herself. Because that was Noah. The man who made things easier for the people he loved, even when those people had just taken everything with them on the way out. He rebuilt himself over the 2 years that followed the way people rebuild when they have no alternative. Quietly. Without drama. One ordinary day placed after the last. He met Clara at a staff gathering in the autumn of the 2nd year. She was a nurse who had come as someone else's guest, and had spent the first 40 minutes standing near the entrance, looking precisely as uncomfortable as Noah felt, at events where he was expected to be sociable on demand. He had walked over, not because he was ready for anything new, because she looked like someone who needed rescuing from the obligation of pretending to enjoy herself. They talked for 3 hours. He told her about Victoria 6 months later. All of it. The kitchen table. The letter. The clock that had said 7:14. Clara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "She must have loved you very much to be that frightened of staying." Noah looked at her. "That is a generous interpretation." "It is the honest one," Clara said. He married her the following year, not as a replacement. Because she was entirely herself, and entirely new, and loving her did not require any of the old language. Nell arrived 18 months later, dark curls from her first hour. An expression of absolute assessment that she directed at everyone who came near her, and that Noah recognized immediately as something she had inherited entirely from her mother. They had 4 years together. 4 years of Sunday mornings and school runs, and the specific contentment of a life small enough to hold completely, and large enough to contain everything that mattered. Sunday mornings were their best time. No schedule. No obligation. Just the three of them in a kitchen that smelled of coffee and toast and whatever Nell had decided she wanted to draw that morning. She drew every Sunday morning without exception. Sitting at the kitchen table, with her tongue between her teeth, in the specific concentration of a child who takes her work seriously. Noah would read. Clara would sit beside Nell and occasionally offer opinions on the drawings that Nell accepted or rejected based on criteria only she fully understood. It was ordinary, in the way that only the best things are ordinary. Present. Complete. Not requiring anything else to make it sufficient. Then Clara was diagnosed. The illness moved faster than any of the doctors had prepared them for. Nell was 3 when it began. She was 4 when Clara sat beside her bed one evening and told her, in the careful, honest language of a woman who had decided her daughter deserved the truth, that she was going to have to be very brave for a while. Nell had held her mother's hand and said without hesitation, "I know, Mummy, but Daddy will stay." Clara had kept herself together until Nell was asleep. Then she had gone to find Noah in the kitchen. She told him what Nell had said. They sat together on the kitchen floor for a long time, saying nothing, simply present. The way they had always been best at being together. In the final weeks, Clara asked Noah one thing. Tell Nell about Victoria one day, the honest version, not the one where she is the person who hurt you, the one where she was a young woman who was frightened and made the only choice she could see at the time. Noah looked at her. Why? Because I want Nell to understand that people are more complicated than the worst thing they ever did, Clara said. And because loving someone and leaving them are not always opposites. She paused. And because she gave you back to me. And I have never once stopped being grateful for that. Noah did not have words for what moved through him in that moment. He simply held her hand. And promised. Clara died on a Thursday morning in April. Nell was 4 years and 2 months old. After Clara died, Noah sold the house. Not immediately. 5 months later, when staying in it, had stopped feeling like keeping her close, and started feeling like standing in a space where something used to be. He moved into a smaller apartment near Nell's school. He found work where he could. The teaching position he had held did not survive the extended leave he had needed to take. He tutored privately. He repaired things. He drove. He drove because the hours were flexible, and the silence of a car suited a man who had made his peace with quiet, and because Nell's school finished at 3:15, and he needed to be the one standing at the gate when she came through it. He had been driving for Sterling Industries for 7 months. He had not connected the name on the building to the woman from the kitchen table. The Victoria he had known at 24 had been someone entirely different. Someone with a notebook full of ideas, and a ring on her finger, and the specific energy of a person who had not yet become what they were going to become. The name on the building belonged to someone built from different material. He had been wrong about that, but he did not know it yet. 3 weeks before the Tuesday, he had forwarded an internal document to the wrong email address. A simple mistake. The kind that happens when you are managing a school pickup and a delivery schedule and a 7-year-old's homework all at once. He had noticed the error within the hour. He had reported it immediately to his supervisor. Filed the incident report. Considered it handled. He did not know that someone else had accessed that document. He did not know that it had found its way to a journalist. He did not know that on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks later, Victoria Sterling would receive a call about a data breach, and that his name would be the one attached to the access log. He did not know any of it when he parked in the underground car park that morning and told Nell to wait in the back seat while he went to speak with his supervisor. He found out when Victoria Sterling walked toward him across the car park with the expression of a woman who had already decided what was true She had received the call 40 minutes earlier. A data breach. Internal documents in the hands of a journalist preparing to publish a story that would damage the company in ways that would take months to repair. The access log showed one name. By the time Victoria reached the car park, she had been carrying that name for long enough that it had moved past shock and into the cold, precise anger of someone who has already decided what needs to happen next. Noah was standing near his car when she arrived. He saw her face. He understood immediately that something was wrong. He did not understand yet exactly what. Victoria stopped in front of him. "You leaked internal documents to the press." Noah looked at her. "I did not." "Your name is on the access log." "I forwarded a document to the wrong address 3 weeks ago. A mistake. I reported it the same day. Someone else used it. I did not leak anything to anyone." That is a very convenient explanation. It is the true one. The incident report is filed. The timestamp is there. You can verify every detail. And yet the documents are with a journalist. Yes, because someone else used my mistake. That is not the same as me leaking them. Something moved across Victoria's face. Not understanding. The specific frustration of a person who has been given an answer that makes complete sense and cannot afford to accept it, because accepting it means the real source of the breach is still out there, and the damage is still happening, and she is standing in a car park with 40 witnesses and no one to hold responsible. Her anger did not wait for her to work through any of that. She raised her hand. The slap echoed through the car park. A thin line of blood appeared where the edge of her ring caught his cheek. Noah did not move. He absorbed it with the stillness of a man who has made a decision about who he is going to be in this moment, and is holding to it. Victoria looked at her hand, then at him. "Get out," she said. "Clear your things and get out of this building." Noah reached into his jacket pocket. He removed his company badge. He placed it on the bonnet of the car beside him. He nodded once. No anger. No bitterness. The exhaustion of a man who has been losing things for a very long time and has learned that fighting does not bring them back. Then the car door opened. Nell had waited as long as she could. She climbed out. She looked at the thin line of blood on her father's cheek. She looked at Victoria, and she smiled. The smile that had no self-consciousness in it. No calculation. Just warmth offered freely to whoever happened to be standing there. "You're Victoria." Victoria's stomach tightened. Noah had gone very still. Nell. But Nell was already walking toward her. One knee bandaged from the fall at school that morning. School bag on her back. Moving with the unhurried certainty of a child who has never once questioned whether she would be welcomed. "Mummy told me all about you." Victoria did not move. "She said you and Daddy loved each other before I was born." The car park was completely still. Nell looked up at Victoria with clear, steady eyes. "She said you were supposed to be my mummy. If this story has you right now, do not look away, keep watching. The best part is coming." Victoria sat in her office for 4 hours after the car park. She did not take meetings. She did not answer calls. She sat at her desk and looked at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows and tried to find the version of herself that knew what to do next. That version did not appear. What appeared instead was a car park. A man standing very still. A thin line of blood on his cheek. A little girl walking toward her with complete certainty. She called her head of security at midnight. She told him to pull every log from the incident, every timestamp, every access record, every detail of the forwarded document and the chain of access after that. He called her back the following morning. The results were not what she had expected. Not because they cleared Noah, because they did not fully implicate him either. The incident report was exactly as he described, filed the same day. The forward had been to an internal address. A mistake. But the chain of access after that point was unclear. Multiple users had touched the document in the weeks that followed. Any one of them could have been the source. The timestamp supported Noah's story, but it did not prove it conclusively. Victoria sat with that. She had acted on certainty, and the certainty was not there. She did not sleep that night. She lay in the dark of her apartment and thought about a man standing in a car park who had told her the truth and she had not listened, who had not defended himself with anger, who had simply told her what had happened and then absorbed what she did and nodded and placed his badge on a bonnet and said, "All right." She thought about a little girl with a bandaged knee, walking toward her without hesitation, saying the most devastating thing anyone had said to her in 10 years, with a smile. She thought about the woman who had told that little girl the honest version, who had loved a man well enough to be grateful for the one who broke his heart. On the second morning, her assistant sent the regular briefing package. Victoria opened it at her desk. Her eyes moved across the pages without fully absorbing them until they landed on a printed photograph near the back. A community initiative her foundation had been approached to fund. A program supporting first aid training in public spaces. The photograph showed the launch event from 3 years earlier. A crowded room. Tables. Guests in formal wear. And in the left corner of the photograph, a man kneeling on the floor beside someone who had collapsed. His back was mostly to the camera, but his face was turned slightly. Just enough. Victoria looked at the photograph for a long time. At the set of the shoulders. At the particular stillness of a man working with complete focus. At the hand pressing against a chest with steady, measured force. She turned the page. The article described the event. A charity dinner 3 years earlier. A man collapsed. A member of the public performed CPR for 7 minutes before paramedics arrived. The man survived. He lived for 2 more years. His name was Gerald Sterling. Victoria set the page down. She sat completely still. Her father had collapsed at that event. She had been across the room. She had pushed through the crowd and arrived to find a stranger kneeling beside him. A man with blood on his hand, from a cut he had sustained somewhere in the rush. Working without stopping. Without looking up. She had tried to find him afterward. Nobody knew his name. She looked at the photograph again. At the man in the corner. She knew those shoulders. She knew that stillness. She had stood 3 feet from it 2 days earlier in an underground car park while her hand was still raised. She picked up her phone. She called her head of security. "Find me an address for Noah Carter," she said. She went alone. No driver. No assistant. She stood outside a small apartment building 3 streets from Nell's school and looked at the name beside the buzzer for a long time before she pressed it. Noah's voice came through the intercom. Cautious. "Yes." "It is Victoria Sterling." A long silence. "Nell is asleep. I know. I won't stay long." Another silence. The door buzzed open. He was waiting in the doorway of the apartment when she reached the top of the stairs. Plain grey shirt. The thin line from the ring still visible on his cheek. He did not move to let her in immediately. He looked at her. "How did you find me?" "Your employment file." He nodded once. Then he stepped back. She walked in. The apartment was small. Everything in it chosen for function rather than appearance, except for one wall, which was covered entirely in Nell's drawings. Hundreds of them. Overlapping. Houses with enormous suns. Dogs that may have been horses. A recurring figure with dark curls appearing in almost every one. Victoria stood in front of the wall. She looked at it for a long time without speaking. Then her eyes stopped. Near the center of the wall, a drawing slightly larger than the others. 4 figures standing together, a tall man, a small girl with dark curls, a woman with light around her that Nell had rendered in yellow crayon with the specific generosity of a child who cannot quite capture what she means but tries anyway. And a 4th figure. A woman in a suit, standing slightly apart from the others. But there, in the drawing, part of it. Victoria looked at the fourth figure for a long moment. Then she looked at Noah. "Who is that?" she said quietly. Noah looked at the drawing. "Nell drew it 3 weeks ago," he said. Victoria looked at the suit. "She told me it was the lady Mummy said got lost." Victoria did not speak. She looked at the drawing for a long time. At the 4 figures. At the woman standing slightly apart. But there. Still there. In a 7-year-old's record of everything worth keeping. She turned away from the wall. She reached into her bag. She placed the printed photograph on the small table between them. Noah looked at it. He said nothing. "Is that you?" she said. He looked at the photograph for a moment. "Yes. That was 3 years ago, a charity dinner." "Yes. The man on the floor was my father." Noah looked up. His expression did not collapse. It shifted, the way a face shifts when 2 things that have been entirely separate, suddenly and permanently connect. "I didn't know that," he said. "I know you didn't." Victoria looked at the photograph. "My father lived for 2 more years after that night," she said. "The doctors told me those 7 minutes were the difference." She looked at him. "He died 18 months ago, but I had 2 more years with him. 2 years I would not have had." She set the photograph down. "You gave me that. Without knowing it was me. Without knowing anything about me except that there was a man on the floor who needed help." She held his gaze. "And 2 days ago She stopped. She pressed her lips together. Noah waited. "The full investigation results came back this morning," she said. "Your incident report was filed correctly. The timestamp is consistent with everything you told me. You did not leak anything. Someone else used your mistake. You were telling the truth and I did not listen." She looked at him. "I was wrong about the documents. I was wrong about what I did. And I was wrong 10 years ago when I left a letter on a kitchen table and got into a taxi before you woke up." She looked at the wall of drawings. "I am sorry for all of it." The apartment was completely quiet. Noah looked at the photograph on the table, then at the wall, then at Victoria. He pulled out a chair. "Sit down," he said. She sat. He sat across from her. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Why did you come here tonight? The real reason." Victoria looked at the drawing with the 4 figures. "Because I needed to understand something," she said. "What?" "How a person becomes what you are." Noah said nothing. 2 days ago, you stood in a car park while I accused you of something you did not do. And when I did what I did, you did not flinch. You did not retaliate. You simply stood there." She looked at him. "And then your daughter came running out, and your face changed completely. Everything I had just done simply left your face, because she needed you to be okay." She looked at the drawing again. "I need to understand how a person learns to do that." Noah was quiet for a long moment. "You do not learn it," he said. "It becomes you, through the things that happen and the choices you make about who you want to be on the other side of them." Victoria looked at her hands. "Clara told Nell about me," she said. "Yes. Why?" Noah looked at the wall. "Because Clara believed people deserve to be understood as more than the worst thing they ever did. And because she wanted Nell to understand that love and loss are not always simple." He paused. "And because she said Victoria gave you back to me, and she had never once stopped being grateful for that." Victoria sat with those words. "She sounds extraordinary," she said. "She was," Noah said simply. The apartment was quiet. Nell's drawings covered the wall between them. "Your father," Noah said quietly. "What were those 2 years like?" Victoria looked up. "The best 2 years I had with him," she said. "He slowed down. He started a garden. He told me things about my mother I had never known." Her voice was not quite steady. "He became himself again, fully, in a way I had not seen since I was a child." She looked at Noah. I had that because you knelt on a floor and did not stop. Noah said nothing. And 2 days ago, She could not finish the sentence. Noah looked at her for a long time. You were wrong, he said, about the documents and about everything else. Yes. And you came here. Yes. That matters, he said. Not enough to fix it, but it matters. Victoria nodded. She stood. Your position at Sterling Industries is yours if you want it back, she said. Noah was quiet. He looked at the table, then at her. I don't think I can come back, he said. Victoria looked at him. Not because of anger, he said. Some things change the shape of something in ways that cannot be undone by an offer. I think we both know that. Victoria held his gaze. Then she nodded. I understand, she said. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door. Then she stopped. The medical bills from Clara's treatment, whatever remains outstanding, send them to my office. Noah looked at her. That is not why I told you about her. I know, Victoria said. It is not why I am offering. She looked at the wall of drawings one last time. At the 4 figures. At the woman standing slightly apart. But still there. Then she left. Victoria did not stop. She went back to Sterling Industries and she did not stop. Not because she had been forgiven. Because she had finally understood that the work of becoming someone different does not wait for forgiveness to arrive first. She had her head of security conduct a full investigation. The real source of the breach was identified within a week. A senior analyst who had accessed the forwarded document and sold it. He was terminated and referred to the company's legal team. Noah's name was formally cleared in writing. Victoria signed the letter herself. She changed. Not overnight. Not dramatically. The way real change happens. In small decisions made consistently over time. She learned the names of the people in her building. Not the executives. The people who cleaned the floors and made the coffee and drove the cars and kept everything running that made everything else possible. She stopped measuring people by what they produced for the company. She started being curious about who they were when the building was empty. Her assistant noticed first. Then the junior executives. Then gradually everyone who moved through Sterling Industries began to sense something different about the woman running it. Not softer, more present. As though she had finally arrived fully in the room she had always been standing in. 4 months after the car park, Victoria established a fund through Sterling Industries for single parents in the company who needed emergency support. Emergency school collections, medical appointments, the specific crises that arrive without warning and force a parent to choose between their child and their career. She named it quietly. No press release. No announcement. Just a fund that existed and that people could access without explanation or apology. She named it after Clara. Noah found out about it 4 months after it was established. He came to her office. He stood in the doorway. You named it after Clara, he said. I did, Victoria said. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, she would have found that funny. Why? Because she always said the people who cause the most damage usually have the most capacity for good. She said they just need something to break them open first. He paused. She was talking about you when she said that. Victoria said nothing. She never met you, he said. But she knew you, through everything I told her, and she was not wrong about you. He left. Victoria sat at her desk for a long time, looking at the city, at the 100 lit windows across the street, 100 lives she was only beginning to understand, she knew nothing about. 8 months after the car park, Noah received a job offer, a school 3 hours away, head of mathematics department, the position he had been working toward before everything changed, before Clara, before the driving, before Tuesday mornings in underground car parks. He told Nell at dinner. She ate 3 spoonfuls of pasta. Then she looked up. Will we still see Victoria? Noah looked at his daughter. I don't know, sweetheart. Nell considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. I think we should, she said. She seems like someone who needs people to stay. Noah looked at his daughter for a long moment, at the dark curls, at the expression of complete certainty she had inherited entirely from her mother. Then he accepted the job. And he went to Victoria's office the following afternoon. She was at her desk when he knocked. She looked up. She saw his face and understood immediately. You're leaving, she said. A teaching position, head of department. It is what I trained for. Victoria nodded. She looked at her desk, then at him. I owe you something, she said. You don't. I do. She looked at him. I owe you the thing I should have said 10 years ago instead of a letter on a kitchen table. Noah waited. I was afraid, she said, not of staying, of needing someone so much that losing them would have finished me. So I left before I could find out what that felt like. She looked at her hands. And then I spent 10 years finding out anyway, just from the other direction. Noah was quiet. I spent 10 years becoming successful, Victoria said, and somehow you spent 10 years becoming happy. She looked at him. I think you won. Noah smiled. The smile of a man who has been through enough to understand that some things cannot be measured against each other. This was never a competition, Victoria, he said. He picked up his jacket from the chair. He paused in the doorway. Nell wants to know if we can have dinner before we go. The three of us, somewhere with good pasta. Victoria looked at him. I know a place, she said. He nodded and left. The dinner happened on a Friday evening. A small restaurant 3 streets from Nell's school. No agenda. No apology. No history brought to the table. Just pasta and a 7-year-old who ordered dessert before the main course and was allowed to because her father had decided that some rules existed to be suspended on evenings like this one. Nell talked the entire time. About her new school. About a duck she had named Gerald. About the drawing she was working on. About the fact that pasta with butter was objectively better than pasta with sauce, and anyone who disagreed was simply wrong. Victoria listened. She did not perform listening. She simply listened. The way she had been learning to listen. Fully. Without calculating what came next. When the evening ended, and they stood on the pavement outside the restaurant, Nell hugged Victoria before Noah could say anything. Small arms. Full force. The specific embrace of a child who has decided something and is acting on it without asking anyone's permission. Victoria held on. Longer than she expected to. Then Noah took Nell's hand and they walked toward the car. Victoria watched them go. Then Nell looked back. She ran back to Victoria. She pressed something into her hand. A folded piece of paper. Then she ran back to her father and they walked away. Victoria looked at the folded paper in her hand. She waited until she was in her car. Until the street outside was quiet. Until there was nobody watching. Then she opened it. A drawing. 4 figures. A tall man. A small girl with dark curls. A woman with yellow light around her. And a 4th figure. A woman in a suit. No longer standing slightly apart. Standing with them. Part of the group. At the top of the drawing in the careful, uneven handwriting of a 7-year-old who was still learning how letters worked. 4 words. People who stay. Victoria sat in her car on a quiet street and looked at the drawing for a long time. At the 4 figures. At the yellow light. At the 4 words written by a child who had inherited her mother's particular generosity of spirit and her father's instinct for paying attention to the things that mattered. Then, Victoria Sterling. The most feared CEO in the city. The woman whose signature could create millionaires or end careers. The woman who had not cried in 10 years. Cried. Not because of what she had lost, because of what she had finally understood. That power was not the thing that silenced rooms. It was the thing that filled them. That success was not the opposite of happiness, but that confusing them cost you things you could not get back. That some goodbyes did not stay the size they were when you said them. That some people were not chapters, and that it was never too late to begin paying attention. To the ones whose names you had not learned. To the ones who showed up quietly and carried things nobody saw them carrying. To the ones who knelt on floors when everyone else stepped back. To the ones who told their daughters the honest version. To the ones who ran across car parks with bandaged knees and school bags and smiles that had no calculation in them. To the ones who stayed. She folded the drawing carefully along its original creases. She placed it in her bag. Close to her, she started the car. And for the first time in 10 years, Victoria Sterling drove home, feeling like she was going somewhere worth arriving at. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it today. Subscribe to Aurora Cinema Fiction. Leave a comment below and tell us where in the world you are watching from. You might be surprised how many people felt exactly what you just felt. And remember, every story we tell is made with one purpose: to make you feel deeply and remind you that love in all its forms is always worth fighting for.